The silver probe drifted silently through space, its simple solar panels catching the light of distant stars. For 3 years it had traveled from Earth, carrying messages of peace and samples of human culture. Now it floated helplessly in the grip of an alien tractor beam. Commander Vextal examined the primitive vessel through the viewing port of his ship. His pale blue skin rippled with amusement as his forearms worked the control panels. The creature was typical of his species. Tall, thin, with compound eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. He had conquered many worlds, and this one looked like it would be easier than most. The probe's databanks held everything the aliens needed to know about Earth. Music, art, literature, and most importantly, military records. Vextal studied the human wars with growing confidence. These creatures fought each other constantly, but their weapons were laughably primitive. Chemical explosives, metal bullets, simple aircraft. They had not even mastered space travel properly. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "the probe contains historical data about their conflicts. They seem to enjoy warfare, but their technology is centuries behind ours." Vextal clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The Zephyrian Empire had perfected the art of conquest. Energy shields that could stop any weapon, plasma cannons that could melt through any armor, ships that moved faster than light. These humans still used rockets that burned chemical fuel. "Prepare the standard ultimatum," he ordered. "Give them 1 of their years to surrender. That should be more than enough time for them to understand their situation." Back on Earth, Jake Collins was having a normal Tuesday morning. The 40-year-old veteran hammered nails into wooden boards, building a house in small-town Ohio. The sun was warm on his back, and he was thinking about lunch when the black cars pulled up. 2 people in dark suits got out and walked toward him. Jake set down his hammer and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had seen enough government agents during his time in the Marines to recognize them instantly. "Mr. Collins?" the woman asked. She was tall and serious, with short brown hair. "I'm Agent Parker. This is Agent Williams. We need to talk." Jake looked at his co-workers who had stopped their own work to stare. "Am I in some kind of trouble?" "No, sir," Agent Williams said. He was a thin man with nervous eyes. "We need your help. It's a matter of national security." They drove Jake to a small airport where a military jet waited. No one would tell him where they were going or why they needed him. All Agent Parker would say was that his country needed his experience. 3 hours later, Jake found himself in a room deep underground. The walls were metal, and computer screens showed images of space. A woman in an Air Force uniform stood at the front of the room. Her name tag read, General Stone. "Gentlemen," she said to the small group of men and women who had been brought there, "what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. 3 days ago, we received our first communication from an alien species." Jake felt his stomach drop. He looked around the room and saw other faces he recognized. There was Lisa Martinez, an Air Force pilot he had met during a joint training exercise. Danny Wright, an Army Ranger who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Alex Hayes, a Navy SEAL with more medals than Jake could count. Sam Johnson, a former Green Beret medic who had saved Jake's life once in a desert firefight. General Stone pressed a button, and the screen showed an image of a sleek alien ship. It was beautiful in a deadly way, all smooth curves and glowing lights. "They call themselves the Zephyrian Empire," she continued. "They found one of our deep space probes and used it to learn about us. Then they sent us this message." The screens changed to show text in English. Jake read it twice before the words sank in. "To the species of the 3rd planet, your kind shows potential for manual labor within our empire. You have 1 of your years to surrender your military forces and accept integration into our civilization. Resistance will result in standard pacification protocols. Your primitive technology cannot match our capabilities. Choose wisely." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Danny Wright spoke up. "How many ships do they have?" "Unknown," General Stone replied. "But intelligence suggests it's a lot more than we do. They've conquered 17 other star systems. Their technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours." Lisa Martinez raised her hand. What do we have to fight them with? Not much, the general admitted. We've been building a space defense force in secret for the past decade, but it was designed to fight other humans, not aliens with energy shields and plasma weapons. Jake stared at the alien ship on the screen. It reminded him of something, but he could not quite place what. Then it hit him. It looked like the tanks the enemy had used against his unit in Afghanistan. Big, scary, and supposedly unbeatable. General, he said slowly, you didn't bring us here to fight aliens in space. Battles, no, she agreed. We brought you here because you've all fought enemies with better equipment than you had. You've won battles you should have lost. We need that experience now. Sam Johnson leaned back in his chair. Ma'am, with respect, fighting insurgents in the desert is different from fighting spaceships. Is it? General Stone asked. The enemy has better weapons, better armor, better everything, but they're confident. Maybe too confident they think they understand warfare because they've beaten everyone else they've faced. Jake felt a slow smile spread across his face. He was starting to understand why they had been brought here. They've never fought humans before, he said. Exactly, the general replied. They've studied our history, our wars, our tactics, but they've only seen us fight each other. They don't know what we're really capable of when we're fighting for survival. Alex Hayes spoke for the first time. What's the plan, General? Learn everything we can about them, find their weaknesses, and teach them that humans don't surrender just because the odds are bad. Jake thought about his time in the Marines, about the battles where his unit had been outnumbered and outgunned but had won anyway. It had not been because they had better equipment. It had been because they refused to give up and found ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. When do we start? He asked. General Stone smiled grimly. Right now. We have 11 months to get ready, and gentlemen, we're going to need every single day. As the briefing continued, Jake stared at the image of the alien ship. The Zephyrians thought they understood combat because they had superior technology. They thought humans would surrender when faced with impossible odds. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Outside the underground facility, the sun continued to shine on a world that had no idea it was about to go to war. But in that small room, a group of veterans began planning humanity's first interstellar conflict. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had given Earth's warriors time to prepare, and humans had always been very good at making the most of whatever time they had. 6 months had passed since the ultimatum arrived. Jake Collins stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching ships move in the darkness. They were not beautiful ships like the ones in movies. These vessels looked like what they were: converted cargo haulers, modified passenger liners, and a few actual warships built in a hurry. The station itself was new, built from parts of the old International Space Station and a lot of steel from Earth. It served as humanity's military headquarters in space. Jake still felt strange floating in zero gravity, but he was getting used to it. Jake, a voice called behind him. He turned to see Lisa Martinez floating toward him. The Air Force pilot had adapted to space faster than anyone else. Her dark hair was tied back, and she wore the blue jumpsuit that all the space defense personnel used. The alien ship is coming, she said. Admiral Murphy wants all advisors on the bridge. Jake pushed off from the window and followed Lisa through the narrow corridors. The station smelled like metal and recycled air. It was not comfortable, but it was home now. On the bridge, Admiral Kate Murphy stood before a large screen showing the edge of Earth's solar system. She was a career Navy officer who had volunteered to command humanity's first space fleet. Her gray hair was cut short, and her eyes never seemed to rest. There, she pointed at the screen. A dot of light appeared near Jupiter's orbit. That's them. The alien ship grew larger as it approached. It was sleek and silver, shaped like a knife blade cutting through space. Lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt to look at. Jake had seen pictures, but seeing the real thing made his stomach tighten. Danny Wright floated next to the tactical station. The Army Ranger had spent months studying alien technology with Earth's best scientists. It's smaller than their main warships, he said. Probably a destroyer or heavy cruiser. Still big enough to wipe out our entire fleet, Sam Johnson added from across the bridge. The former medic had become their expert on alien psychology, trying to understand how the enemy thought. Alex Hayes checked his tablet. Our ships are in position, 12 vessels total with the carrier Defiance as our flagship. Jake looked at the human fleet on another screen. The ships were spread out in a loose formation that would have made any Earth admiral nervous. But they had learned that traditional naval tactics did not work in space. Everything was different here. No up or down, no weather, no terrain to hide behind. The alien ship slowed as it reached the inner solar system. A communication signal came through the speakers, translated by computers into English. Primitive vessels of Earth, the voice was cold and mechanical. I am Captain Kethmore of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. Your time of surrender has nearly ended. We have come to demonstrate why resistance is futile. Admiral Murphy activated the reply system. Captain Kethmore, this is Admiral Murphy of the Earth Defense Force. We request a meeting to discuss terms. There was a pause. When the alien captain spoke again, Jake could hear amusement in the translated voice. Terms? You have no position from which to negotiate terms. However, we will provide a demonstration of our capabilities. Perhaps this will convince your species to accept reality. Jake exchanged glances with the other veterans. They had expected this. The aliens were confident, maybe too confident. That could be used against them. We propose a limited engagement. Admiral Murphy continued. One of our ships against one of yours, to better understand the capabilities gap between our forces. Another pause, longer this time. Very well. We will use our escort vessel Deathakar. It is our smallest warship, appropriate for dealing with your primitive technology. When your ship is destroyed, perhaps your leaders will see reason. The communication ended. Admiral Murphy turned to her staff. Signal the Defiance. Captain Garcia is authorized to begin the demonstration. On another screen, Jake watched the human flagship separate from the rest of the fleet. The Defiance had started life as an aircraft carrier, but now it bristled with missile launchers, railguns, and experimental energy weapons. It was the most powerful ship humanity had ever built, and it still looked tiny compared to the alien vessel approaching it. Captain Tony Garcia's voice came over the radio. All stations report ready, Admiral. We have full power to weapons and shields. The alien escort ship was beautiful in a deadly way. It moved without any visible engines, gliding through space like a shark through water. Blue light gathered around its weapon ports, and Jake could see the shimmer of energy shields surrounding the hull. Their shields are active, Danny reported, reading from his instruments. Energy output is incredible. Our computers can barely measure it. Lisa studied her own screens. Their approach vector is textbook perfect. They're not taking any chances. The first shots came from the alien ship. Beams of blue plasma lanced across space, striking the Defiance's shields. The human ship's energy barriers flared and died almost instantly. Secondary explosions bloomed along the hull as armor plating melted under the intense heat. Direct hit, Alex reported grimly. The Defiance has lost main shields and taken hull damage. Captain Garcia's voice came through static. Still here, Admiral, returning fire. The human ship fired everything it had. Missiles streaked toward the alien vessel, followed by streams of metal projectiles from the railguns. The weapons struck the alien shields and vanished in flashes of light. Not one shot reached the enemy hull. As expected, came the alien captain's voice over the radio. Your weapons lack sufficient energy to penetrate our defenses. This demonstration is concluded. But Jake was not watching the main battle. He was studying the readings on his tablet, comparing them to calculations the team had made over the past months. The aliens were powerful, but they were not perfect. Danny, he said quietly, are you seeing the shield frequency variations? Danny nodded without looking up from his instruments. Yeah, and the power distribution is uneven across the hull. Lisa checked her pilot's calculations. Confirmed. There's a weak spot at the rear, just like we predicted. The Defiance was taking a beating, but Captain Garcia was not done. The human ship suddenly changed course, using thruster rockets to dive below the alien vessel. The movement was sharp and violent, the kind of maneuver that would be impossible for a ship designed to fight in space. The alien captain seemed surprised. His ship began to turn, trying to bring its main weapons to bear on the human vessel. But by then, the Defiance had done something unexpected. 3 nuclear torpedoes modified with Earth's most advanced guidance systems slipped through space toward the alien ship's weak point. They had been fired during the maneuver, hidden by the Defiance's hull until the last moment. The aliens tried to stop them, but their weapon systems were designed to track large targets, not small, fast-moving missiles. 2 torpedoes were destroyed, but the third slipped through the gap in the rear shields. The nuclear explosion was small by Earth standards, but it was enough. For the first time in Zephyrian military history, one of their ships had been damaged by a primitive species. Captain Kethmore's voice came over the radio, and even through the translation, Jake could hear the shock. "Impossible. Our shields are impenetrable." Admiral Murphy's reply was calm and professional. "Captain, we believe this concludes our demonstration. Thank you for the educational experience." The alien ship slowly moved away, its crew no doubt trying to understand how they had been hit. Jake watched it go and felt a grim satisfaction. They had not won the engagement. The Defiance was badly damaged and barely operational, but they had done something more important. They had proven that the aliens could bleed. Sam Johnson floated over to join the group. "How do you think they'll react to this?" "They'll be confused," Jake replied. "In their experience, primitive species don't fight back effectively. They'll have to report this to their superiors." Lisa nodded. "And that gives us time to prepare for the real battle." Danny was already working on his tablet, analyzing every second of the engagement. "We learned a lot today. Their shields have gaps. Their weapons can't track small, fast targets, and they don't expect unconventional maneuvers." Admiral Murphy joined them at the observation window. "The real test comes next. When their main fleet arrives, we won't be facing one ship, we'll be facing dozens." Jake thought about the battles he had fought on Earth, where his unit had been outnumbered and outgunned but had found ways to win anyway. The key was always the same: don't fight the enemy's kind of battle, make them fight yours. "Admiral," he said, "we need to forget everything we know about space warfare. The aliens expect us to fight like a proper fleet. We need to fight like guerrillas." She looked at him with interest. "What do you mean?" "Hit-and-run attacks. Ambushes. Use every dirty trick we can think of. Make them fight our kind of war instead of theirs." Admiral Murphy smiled grimly. "I like the sound of that. Get to work, gentlemen. We have a few months to turn our fleet into something the galaxy has never seen before." As the alien ship disappeared into the darkness, Jake felt a familiar feeling in his chest. It was the same emotion he had felt before every difficult battle during his military service: fear mixed with determination, and underneath it all the absolute refusal to surrender. The aliens thought they understood combat because they had superior technology, but they had never fought humans who refused to play by the rule. 3 months after the first encounter, space around Earth filled with alien ships. Jake Collins watched from the bridge of the Resilience as 57 Zephyrian vessels moved into attack formation. The enemy fleet was massive, stretching across space like a wall of metal and energy. At the center of the alien formation was the largest ship Jake had ever seen. The Infinite Dominion was 3 kilometers long and bristled with weapons. Its hull was black metal that seemed to absorb light, and energy shields surrounded it like a glowing bubble. "Fleet Admiral Zorthak," Admiral Murphy said quietly, reading from her intelligence reports. "He's conquered 6 worlds personally. This is his flagship." Jake nodded but did not take his eyes off the tactical display. The human fleet was scattered across the solar system in small groups. 43 ships total, most of them converted civilian vessels with weapons bolted onto their hulls. On paper, it was not even close to a fair fight, but Jake had learned long ago that fair fights were for sports, not war. "All ships report ready," came the voice of Lisa Martinez over the radio. She was flying a prototype fighter based on Earth's best atmospheric aircraft, but modified for space combat. "Formation Alpha is in position. Formation Beta ready," reported. Danny Wright from his position commanding a group of missile boats. These were small, fast ships built around one purpose: delivering nuclear warheads to enemy targets. Formation Gamma standing by, added Alex Hayes. His squadron was the strangest of all, converted cargo haulers that looked harmless but carried deadly surprises. Sam Johnson's voice came from the medical frigate Mercy. Hospital ship ready to bow. Receive casualties. All medical teams standing by. Jake felt a familiar tightness in his chest. It was the same feeling he had experienced before every major battle during his military service. Fear and excitement mixed together, along with the knowledge that many people would not survive the next few hours. The alien fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their ships maintained precise distances from each other, creating overlapping fields of fire that would destroy any enemy foolish enough to attack head-on. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a machine designed for killing. Incoming transmission, reported the communications officer, the main screen filled with the image of Fleet Admiral Zorthak. He was larger than the previous alien, Captain, with darker blue skin and more elaborate armor. His forearms moved constantly, and his compound eyes seemed to look in multiple directions at once. Humans of Earth, his translated voice boomed through the bridge. I am Fleet Admiral Zorthak of the Zephyrian Empire. Your demonstration 3 months ago was impressive for a primitive species, but it changes nothing. You damaged one escort, vessel through luck and surprise. My fleet represents the finest military force in the galaxy. Admiral Murphy stepped forward. Admiral Zorthak, we're prepared to discuss terms of peace. There's no need for bloodshed. The aliens' mandibles clicked in what their computers translated as laughter. Peace? You have nothing to offer except your surrender. You're scattered. Fleet cannot hope to match our firepower. This will be over within hours. The transmission ended. Jake looked around the bridge at faces he had come to know well over the past months. These were good people. Sailors, soldiers, pilots, and civilians who had volunteered to defend their world. Most of them would probably die today. But that was not the point. The point was to make the aliens pay such a high price for victory that they would think twice about attacking other human colonies in the future. All stations, this is Admiral Murphy, came the voice over the fleet communication system. Execute Plan Chaos. Good luck to all of you. The battle began not with the massive clash of fleets that the aliens expected, but with something much stranger. The human ships suddenly scattered in every direction, abandoning any pretense of formation flying. Jake watched Admiral Zorthak's confusion on the tactical display as human vessels spread across space like startled fish. Some ships fled toward the outer planets, others dove toward the sun, and a few seemed to be heading for the asteroid belt. What are they doing? Came the alien admiral's voice over an open channel. Their formation has completely collapsed. But Jake knew better. This was not panic, this was the plan. Instead of fighting the kind of battle the aliens expected, the humans were going to fight their own kind of war. Danny Wright's missile boats were the first to strike. Instead of attacking the alien fleet directly, they fired their weapons at empty space, creating fields of debris and nuclear mines that would detonate when the enemy ships passed through. The Zephyrians moved forward confidently, their shields easily deflecting the scattered explosions. But as they advanced, they found themselves flying through increasingly dense clouds of metal fragments and radioactive particles. Their shields are holding, reported the tactical officer, but power consumption is increasing rapidly. Alex Hayes led his cargo haulers in what appeared to be a desperate retreat. The aliens sent 3 destroyers to pursue them, confident of an easy victory. But as the enemy ships closed in, the human vessels suddenly released their cargo, thousands of modified shipping containers spread across space, each one equipped with simple thrusters and basic weapons. Within seconds, the 3 destroyers found themselves surrounded by a swarm of improvised attack drones. The alien weapons were designed to fight large starships, not clouds of small targets. Their plasma cannons could destroy individual drones, but there were too many to track and eliminate. The containers began impacting the destroyer shields in waves, each hit weakening the defensive barriers. Impossible, came Admiral Zorthak's voice. They're using civilian equipment as weapons. Lisa Martinez dove her fighter squadron through the chaos, using the drone swarm as cover. Her modified aircraft were fast and maneuverable, darting between alien ships like angry wasps. They could not do much damage individually, but they forced the enemy to divide their attention. Meanwhile, Sam Johnson's medical frigate moved between the scattered human ships, providing support and coordination. The aliens ignored the clearly marked hospital ship, not understanding that it was serving as a command center for the entire human fleet. Jake coordinated the battle from the Resilience, using everything he had learned about guerrilla warfare. The key was to never let the enemy fight the battle they wanted to fight. Keep them confused, keep them reacting, and never give them a clear target. But the aliens were adapting. Admiral Zorthak's fleet began to spread out, trying to counter the human tactics. Several smaller alien ships broke off to hunt down the scattered human vessels. "We're losing the initiative," Admiral Murphy said grimly. "They're starting to understand our strategy." Jake nodded. "Time for Phase 2. Signal all ships. Execute hammer blow." Across the battlefield, the scattered human fleet suddenly changed direction. Ships that had been fleeing now turned toward the alien formation. Vessels that had been hiding behind debris fields emerged with weapons charging. The aliens found themselves facing not a broken fleet, but a coordinated attack from multiple directions. Human ships struck at the edges of the alien formation, focusing their fire on individual targets. One by one, alien ships began to die. A destroyer overwhelmed by drone swarms exploded in a brilliant flash. A cruiser, its shields weakened by constant impacts, succumbed to a coordinated missile strike. Another vessel trying to pursue human fighters flew into a nuclear minefield and vanished in atomic fire. But the cost was terrible. Human ships were being destroyed faster than they could inflict damage. The converted civilian vessels were not built for this kind of warfare, and alien plasma weapons cut through their armor like paper. "We've lost 12 ships," reported the tactical officer. 17 more are heavily damaged. Jake watched the tactical display and felt a cold knot in his stomach. They were losing, but they were making the aliens pay for every victory. The question was whether they could inflict enough damage to make the enemy reconsider their invasion. Admiral Zorthak's voice came over the radio again, but this time there was anger in his translated words. "Enough of these games. All ships concentrate fire on their command vessel. End this farce." The alien fleet began to converge on the Resilience. Jake watched death approaching in the form of 50 energy weapons charging to fire at his ship. But before the aliens could attack, something unexpected happened. Lisa Martinez's fighter, moving at maximum velocity, slipped through the gaps in the alien formation and struck the Infinite Dominion directly. Her single nuclear warhead detonated against the flagship's primary shield generator. The explosion was small compared to the massive dreadnought, but it was enough to cause the ship's shields to flicker and fail. For the first time in the battle, the alien flagship was vulnerable. Jake smiled grimly as he watched human ships across. The battlefield turned toward the damaged dreadnought. The aliens had made their ships too powerful, too important. When their flagship was threatened, they had no choice but to defend it. "All ships," he called over the radio, "concentrate fire on the Infinite Dominion. Take down their flagship." The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Jake began to think they might have a chance. The aliens were learning that fighting humans was different from fighting anyone else they had encountered, and humans were very good at learning from the sea. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when Jake Collins watched the impossible happen. The alien flagship Infinite Dominion, 3 kilometers of the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, was burning. Lisa Martinez's desperate attack had done more than damage the ship's shields. Her fighter's nuclear warhead had started a chain reaction in the alien power systems. Explosions rippled along the massive hull as secondary systems overloaded and failed. But Admiral Zorthak was not finished. His damaged flagship still had enough firepower to destroy half the human fleet, and the other alien ships were moving to protect their leader. "All human vessels," Jake called over the radio. "Press the attack while their shields are down." The remaining ships of Earth's fleet converged on the wounded dreadnought, like sharks sensing blood in the water. Danny Wright's missile boats fired everything they had at the exposed hull sections. Alex Hayes led his cargo haulers in ramming attacks, their improvised armor doing little to protect them, but buying precious seconds for their weapons to fire. Admiral Zorthak's voice came over the communication channel, and for the first time the alien sounded worried. All ships defend the flagship. Maximum firepower on the human vessels. The alien fleet responded with devastating effect. Plasma beams lanced through space, turning human ships into expanding clouds of vapor and metal. The converted cargo hauler, Freedom, died in a single hit. The destroyer Earth's Pride lasted 3 seconds longer before its reactor exploded. But the humans kept coming. When their weapons failed, they used their ships as weapons. When their ships were destroyed, the crews evacuated in small pods and continued fighting with handheld weapons against alien boarding parties. Sam Johnson's medical frigate Mercy moved through the chaos, rescuing survivors and providing communication links between the scattered human forces. The aliens still ignored the hospital ship, not understanding how important it was to human operations. "Jake," Sam's voice came over a secure channel. "We're losing too many ships. We can't keep this up much longer." Jake looked at the tactical display and felt his heart sink. Of the 43 ships they had started with, only 18 were still fighting. The rest were destroyed, damaged beyond repair, or fleeing toward the outer planets with critical damage. But they had accomplished something incredible. The alien fleet had lost 15 ships, with many others damaged. More importantly, they had proven that humans would not surrender even when facing impossible odds. "Admiral Murphy," Jake called over the radio, "we need to fall back, regroup at Rally Point 3. Admiral Murphy's voice came back strained and tired. "Negative, we can't give them time to repair their flagship. This is our only chance." Understood her reasoning, but he also understood military reality. They were about to lose the war in the next few minutes if they did not change tactics. That was when Alex Hayes made his final contribution to the battle. His last cargo hauler, the merchant ship New Hope, was badly damaged and leaking atmosphere. Instead of retreating, he turned toward the alien flagship and pushed his engines to maximum power. "This is Hayes," his voice came over the radio, calm despite the chaos around him. "I'm going to ram the flagship's main weapon array. All ships use the distraction to hit their engine section." "Negative," Jake replied immediately. "Pull back, Alex, we need you alive." "Sorry, friend," Alex said with a laugh. "This is more important than one old seal." The New Hope accelerated toward the massive alien dreadnought, its cargo hold packed with every explosive device the crew could find. Alien weapons fired at the approaching ship, but Alex had learned from watching their attack patterns. He flew, an erratic course using debris and friendly ships as cover. The cargo hauler struck the Infinite Dominion's main plasma cannon array at nearly 10% the speed of light. The explosion was so bright it temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. When the light faded, the alien flagship's primary weapons were gone, replaced by a gaping hole in the ship's forward section. Admiral Zorthak's ship was crippled, but it was still alive, and the alien fleet was finally beginning to fight back, effectively. They had learned from the human tactics and were adapting their formations to counter the guerrilla attacks. "All remaining ships," Admiral Murphy called over the radio, "implement Plan Exodus, fighting retreat to the asteroid belt." The human fleet began to withdraw, but it was not a panicked flight. The ships moved in coordinated groups covering each other and fighting running battles with their pursuers. They had learned to fight this kind of war over the past months, and they were good at it. Jake coordinated the retreat from the Bridge of the Resilience, which had taken heavy damage but was still functional. His ship had lost main power twice and was running on backup systems, but the crew kept it fighting. "Danny, take your boats and hit their left flank," he called over the radio. "Lisa, if you have any fighters left, provide cover for the medical ships." "Roger that," came Lisa's reply. "I have 3 birds still flying. We'll do what we can." The running battle continued for 2 hours as the human fleet fell back toward the asteroid belt. They lost 4 more ships during the retreat, but they inflicted damage on their pursuers as well. The aliens were learning that chasing humans was almost as dangerous as fighting them head-on. When they reached the asteroid field, Jake called for a general halt. The remaining human ships took cover behind the larger rocks while the alien fleet approached more cautiously. Admiral Zorthak had learned to respect his enemies, even if he did not understand them. His fleet moved slowly through the asteroid field, scanning for ambushes and traps, but the humans had one more surprise waiting. "Jake," came Sam Johnson's voice over a private channel. "The special cargo we loaded on the mining ships is ready." Jake smiled grimly. While the fleet had been fighting, automated mining ships had been working throughout the asteroid belt, following a plan that Jake and the other veterans had developed months earlier. "All ships," he called over the fleet channel, "execute Operation Avalanche." Throughout the asteroid belt, mining charges that had been placed over the past months began to explode. Thousands of carefully positioned explosives sent massive chunks of rock flying toward the alien fleet. The aliens had shields that could stop energy weapons and metal projectiles, but they had never faced an asteroid bombardment. Rocks the size of buildings smashed into their formations, overwhelming their defensive systems through sheer mass and numbers. Several alien ships were crushed outright. Others found their shields overloaded and their hulls cracked by the constant impacts. The perfect formations that had served them so well in previous battles became death traps, as ships collided with each other while trying to avoid the flying debris. "Impossible," came Admiral Zorthak's voice over the radio. "They turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon." But even this was not enough to stop the alien advance. The Zephyrian fleet was battered and reduced, but they still outnumbered the humans, and their technology was still superior to anything Earth could produce. Jake knew they could not win a straight fight, but they had never intended to win a straight fight. "Admiral Murphy," he called over the radio, "I think it's time to talk terms." "Terms?" came Admiral Zorthak's voice, breaking into their communication. "You have no position from which to negotiate terms." "Don't we?" Admiral Murphy replied, calmly. "Admiral, you came here with 57 ships. How many do you have left?" There was a long pause before the alien answered. "Our losses are acceptable within standard operational parameters." 42 ships, Jake said quietly. "You've lost 15 vessels and your flagship is crippled. How many more ships are you willing to lose to conquer one planet?" Another pause, longer this time. When Admiral Zorthak spoke again, his voice was different, less confident, more thoughtful. "What terms do you propose, human?" Jake felt a surge of hope. They had done it. They had forced one of the galaxy's greatest military powers to negotiate instead of simply destroying them. But the hardest part was still ahead. Now they had to convince the aliens that leaving Earth alone was better than continuing the war, and Jake was not sure they could do that with the few ships they had left. The negotiation took place on neutral ground, a small space station built hastily from parts of destroyed ships. Jake Collins floated across from Admiral Zorthak in a room that smelled of metal and fear. Between them sat a simple table with translation equipment. Admiral Zorthak looked different than he had in the battle transmissions. His blue skin was darker now, and his 4 arms moved with less confidence. The alien admiral had lost more than ships in the battle. He had lost his certainty about human weakness.
"Your species fights in ways we do not understand," the alien said through the translator. "Our military manuals contain no protocols for enemies who use their own ships as weapons." Jake studied the alien's face, trying to read emotions that
had no human equivalent. "We fight the way we have to fight. When you're outgunned, you get creative." Admiral Murphy sat beside Jake, her uniform still showing scorch marks from the battle. She had insisted on being present for the negotiations, even though her flagship was barely holding together. "Admiral Zorthak," she said formally, "let's discuss what happens next. Your empire wanted to conquer Earth for its labor force, but now you've seen what kind of workers we are." The alien's mandibles clicked slowly. "Your point is taken. A species that would sacrifice entire fleets rather than surrender would not make compliant workers." Sam Johnson sat at the far end of the table, his medical uniform a stark reminder of the battle's cost. "We've treated prisoners from both sides," he said quietly. "Your wounded and ours. War doesn't have to be the only option here." "Danny Wright," and Lisa Martinez stood guard by the door, though Jake doubted their small weapons would matter if the aliens decided to attack. But their presence sent a message. Humans did not negotiate from weakness, even when they had few options left. "What do you propose?" Admiral Zorthak asked after a long silence. Admiral Murphy leaned forward. "Mutual non-aggression. Your fleet leaves our system and does not return. In exchange, Earth agrees not to develop faster than light travel for military purposes." The alien's compound eyes shifted in patterns that the translation computer could not interpret. "And if we refuse, if we continue the attack?" Jake answered before Admiral Murphy could speak. "Then you'll win, eventually, but it will cost you everything. We have more asteroid belts, more ships being built, and more volunteers signing up every day. How many of your people are you willing to lose for one planet?" Admiral Zorthak was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke, his voice was tired. "In 3 centuries of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire has never faced resistance like this. Other species surrender when they see our technology. They accept that fighting is pointless." "We're not other species," Danny said from the door. "Humans have been fighting impossible wars for our entire history. It's what we do." The alien admiral touched a device on his armor, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed the current positions of both fleets, the battered alien ships near Jupiter, the scattered human vessels hiding in the asteroid belt. "I have 42 ships remaining," Admiral Zorthak said. "Still enough to destroy your planet. But the cost?" He paused, looking at the data. "The cost would be my entire fleet, and the Empire would gain nothing but a dead world." Lisa spoke up from her position by the door. "There's another option. Trade instead of conquest. Earth has resources, knowledge, culture, things that might be valuable to your empire without anyone having to die for them." Admiral Zorthak's mandibles clicked in what the translator suggested might be interest. "Explain." Admiral Murphy activated her own display device, showing images of Earth, cities, factories, farms, universities. "Humans are good at solving problems, especially difficult ones. We might be useful allies instead of slaves." Jake watched the alien admiral's face carefully. This was the crucial moment, the point where Zorthak would decide whether to continue the war or try something new. "Your species destroyed 15 of my ships," the alien said slowly. "Crippled my flagship, killed thousands of my people. And now you offer to trade with us as if we were equals." "We are equals," Jake replied firmly. "Your technology is better, but our determination is stronger. That makes us equal in the only way that matters." The room fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Outside, both fleets waited for word from their leaders. The fate of 2 civilizations hung on the decision of one alien admiral. Finally, Admiral Zorthak spoke. "The Empire will not accept your proposal." Jake felt his heart sink. After everything they had sacrificed, it was going to end in more death and destruction. But the alien was not finished speaking. "However," Admiral Zorthak continued, "I am authorized to negotiate local agreements, a treaty between my fleet and your world, pending approval from Imperial Command." Admiral Murphy leaned forward eagerly. "What kind of treaty?" "Withdrawal of Zephyrian forces from this system. Recognition of Earth as an independent world. Limited. Trade agreements and cultural exchange. And a mutual defense pact. If either of our peoples is attacked by a third party, the other will provide assistance." Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. "You're offering us an alliance?" The alien admiral's mandibles moved in what might have been a smile. "Your species has proven that it understands warfare in ways we do not. That knowledge could be valuable to the Empire. Better to have humans as allies than enemies." The negotiations continued for hours, working out details and technicalities, but the framework was set. Earth would remain free and humans would have their first alien allies. As the meeting ended, Admiral Zorthak approached Jake directly. "I have one question, human. Why did your people fight so hard? Most species surrender when they see the odds against them." Jake thought about all the battles he had fought, all the impossible situations where his unit had refused to give up, because that's who we are. Humans don't surrender just because the odds are bad. We fight until we win, or until there's nothing left to fight with. The alien nodded slowly. I will remember that, and I will make sure the Empire remembers it as well. 3 days later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the space station, watching the alien fleet prepare to leave. The massive ships that had seemed so threatening now looked almost peaceful as they powered up their faster-than-light drives. Danny Wright joined him at the window. Think they'll keep their word? They'll keep it, Jake replied. We proved something, to them they'd never seen before. That technology doesn't always win wars. Lisa Martinez floated over to join them. So what happens now? Do we go back to Earth and pretend this never happened? Sam Johnson came up behind them, carrying a medical tablet with casualty reports. We lost a lot of good people, but we saved our planet and maybe prevented a war that could have lasted generations. Admiral Murphy's voice came over the station intercom. All personnel, this is Admiral Murphy. The alien fleet has jumped to hyperspace. Earth is safe. Cheers echoed through the station's corridors. Jake felt a mixture of relief and sadness. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. So many ships destroyed. So many brave people who would never see Earth again. But as he watched the last alien vessel disappear into the stars, Jake felt something else. Pride. They had faced the impossible and found a way through it. They had shown the galaxy that humans were not just another species to be conquered. You know what this means, Danny said quietly. Other aliens are going to hear about this. Some of them might be friendly, but others... Jake nodded. Others will want to test us. See if we're really as tough as the stories say. Lisa smiled, grimly. Let them come. We've learned a lot about fighting in space over the past year. Sam looked at his casualty reports and sighed. We'll need to build more ships, train more crews, and we'll need to be ready for whatever comes next. Admiral Murphy joined them at the window, still wearing her battle-damaged uniform. The government wants all of you to head up the new Space Defense Corps, help train the next generation of officers. Jake thought about it for a moment. He could go back to Ohio, back to building houses and living a quiet life. But he had seen what was out there, among the stars, both the threats and the opportunities. I'll do it, he said finally, but on one condition. We train them to fight like humans, not like everyone else. Admiral Murphy smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. As the space station began its journey back to Earth, Jake Collins looked out at the stars and wondered what other challenges waited for humanity among them. But whatever came next, he was confident that humans would meet it the same way they always had, with courage, creativity, and an absolute refusal to surrender. The galaxy had learned something important about Earth's veterans. They thought they understood combat until they confronted humans who would rather die than give up, and that lesson would echo among the stars for generations to come.